Kind of just looks like a bowling ball. The fabric wouldn't dip into her butt crack like that. Oh boy. But this is just gorgeous. That's right, another person jumping in on the trend of professional whatever's reacting to good and bad stuff in their own profession. I love watching the Corridor crew react to good and bad special effects, and I've loved watching LegalEagle talk about good things and issues in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia's court episodes. And I figured, hey, I've technically been a professional illustrator and animator for 7 years now. So I want to go over some different comic pages and panels and talk about what went really right and sometimes what went not so right. Oh boy. Okay, so for context, this image was drawn by Rob Liefeld, who is the creator of Deadpool and is a self-taught artist. He got into working at Marvel by being purely self-taught. But because of that, it means he didn't really get a traditional education in anatomy, and that has led to some pretty janky anatomy in a bunch of his artwork. And this is easily the most famously janky image he's done. You could almost fix it by just pushing Captain America's head forward. Like, it wouldn't make it perfect, but right now it kind of looks like his back and shoulders are lined up straight like this, and his chest is like this. Like, his body is this shape somehow instead of being all in line. But the thing is, when you're working for someone else and you're on someone else's deadlines, if you have to get something done, even if you're partway through and you realize it's not great, you kind of just have to finish it and send it in. And I want to think that this is one of those times where that's kind of what happened. I don't know that that's the case, but I want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, because the fact of the matter is, he is objectively a better artist than 99% of people on the planet. Also, again, let's remember, if it wasn't for Rob Liefeld, we wouldn't have Deadpool. So let's go easy on the guy, in spite of the fact that he also drew this, which this to me is worse. Where his hands are just like melting into his side. I don't know if there was supposed to be more text down there to block stuff so that it wouldn't matter, but kind of just looks like a bowling ball. Also, his armpit looks like a butthole. Sorry to be crass, but it's true. But talking about anatomy issues, let's move on to one of my favorite artists. Humberto Ramos, his art is so stylish, and in a way where his anatomy on his characters looks broken a lot of the time, but in a way where it's stylistically done on purpose. Like, he's making it broken on purpose, and when you look at his work, you can kind of tell that. Like in this image here, Spider-Man's back is ridiculously big, like his lats are huge, and his waist is really tiny, and the perspective is being forced a lot to make it... He just looks warped, but the anatomy doesn't look busted in a way where it's an artist who doesn't know what they're doing. Actually, you know what? I think it would actually be kind of interesting. I'm gonna pull up one of his comics, scrub through it, and try and find a panel that I don't like. Okay, you know what? Right here. So this image here, halfway down the page where we've got Nova shouting, this background to me doesn't work for Humberto Ramos's art. And this probably wasn't him, this was probably the colorist doing this, but this background just looks like they took a photograph and added like a fast blur on it. And because Humberto Ramos's art is so, the lines are so sharp, this kind of just feels weird. Like it could, I see the idea because there is high contrast between the sharp line work and the sharp coloring and the faded background, so you really do focus on Nova. I just don't think the two blend that well together. And again, if you disagree with anything I'm saying, feel free to let me know in the comments and tell me your opinion, because a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, even though I do know illustration pretty well, a lot of it is kind of just my bias and what I like seeing out of comic book art. Oh, this is just so unsettling to look at. I mean, the pose, the butt, the neck, and I guess to be fair, I've probably seen Spider-Man in this exact pose, but in this style, I just don't think it really works, and the neck feels so offset. the nose is so tiny. And because like most of this, the proportions of the body, it kind of feels like it's going for a sort of painterly realistic kind of style and not super comic booky. So this awkward kind of broken pose in that style just, to me, doesn't work. And really just, looking at the face, like the nose is so tiny, the lips are really big and unusual, and just how form-fitting the fabric is across the body. And I know that's a thing with comics. I mean, with comic book art, pretty much every character is just wearing skin-tight outfits, and like a lot of the time you can see abs in a way that you wouldn't be able to see through fabric. But in a style like this, it just feels so unusual to see the fabric going so far into her butt crack like that. Because like, I mean, here, look, this is a pretty tight shirt, so I can probably give a good example. Like, pretend my knuckles here are the butt, and when they're being spread apart, like her butt cheeks are being spread apart in that image, the fabric isn't suddenly dipping right down and form-fitting against my knuckle. Like, it is dipping down a bit, but it's not going down that sharply and weirdly. And again, you can push stuff in comics, like it's all fictional, you can stylize your art to make that seem reasonable, but I think it was an odd choice on Marvel's part to get Milo Manara to do this piece, because I'm not super familiar with his work, but from what I've seen, he largely does like erotica kind of stuff. And in an age when comic book companies have been making an effort to make a lot of their female characters less sexualized and less of like the girlfriend and nothing else, it's really weird to get an artist who specializes in erotica kind of stuff to do your cover for, I believe this was like a rebooted Spider-Woman #1 comic from, I don't know, between 5 and 10 years ago? Yeah, that was a weird choice on Marvel's part. This is gorgeous. Francis Manpool's art is fantastic. It's really stylish. And this panel itself, how everything is kind of, I like to refer to the term toilet bowl, like everything is just kind of a toilet, I mean, that makes it sound like a bad thing. That's not how I mean it. But like everything is just swirling down into the middle onto the focal point that we're supposed to focus on. And it's just, gorgeous. I love the composition of this page. It's simple, but it's beautiful. And the colors are just really nice. I believe in this case he wasn't doing his own coloring and inking. Whoever he was working with knew his art well enough to bring his style through in the inking and coloring. And that's another thing for people that don't know the comic book industry that well. When you're working for a company like Marvel or DC, a lot of the times the person doing the pencil layouts, the actual drawings, isn't the one that's inking and coloring. There's usually 3 people doing all that, and then a letterer as well in a lot of cases. Just so stylish. You can't look at something Kenneth Roquefort's drawn, any of his work, and not go, wow, this is so stylish. Like, just, my favorite thing about this page is just the fire and smoke. It's so weirdly done, but works so well in Roquefort's style. Like, and just the way it's so, like, completely unrealistically circling around Supergirl and, like, encasing her and making us focus more on her, and it's got the little smoke, almost arrows pointing at her. Even the panels are basically just like arrows pointing us towards her. And I just love, with Kenneth Roquefort's art, I almost look at it more thinking about the graphic design of it and less the actual illustrations, because he's always got those cool shapes around his panels, and he just works weird shapes into his art all over the place that just look so cool and make everything such a style that's so niche to just him. And now admittedly, the only thing I'd say against this page, and maybe it's because I'm reading it out of context, but I don't exactly know what order he wants us to read these panels in. Like, it doesn't really matter that much, because it feels like the whole point is we're supposed to be looking at this awesome image of Supergirl, because even Clark's eyes are kind of looked in that direction in that last panel of him. But I don't totally know if the third panel we're supposed to look at is her or that headshot of Clark. If a comic page is laid out well as it's supposed to be, your eye will go through the story exactly the way that the artist want, and you won't even be thinking about it. You should never have to think about where you're supposed to look next. If you are, then the artists have done something wrong. And that's not something I frequently find with Kenneth Rutherford's art. He's really good with his page layouts. This is probably just a case where it's because I'm looking at this page out of context. Look at this, and it is... like, if you explained this image to me without me ever having seen it, I would think it was such a weird idea for a Batman cover. I mean, it's, like, first of all, something that should be pointed out if it's not obvious is this is a reference to the very first comic book cover appearance from Batman, Detective Comics 27. That's, this, right here. And if you just told me, okay, we've got Batman swinging and a bright yellow and pink sky in the background. Characters in the foreground are very purple. The building below him is a pretty stark, saturated blue. All of that to me just sounds like, what? You've got a bright yellow and pink background for Batman? But this is just gorgeous. As much as I love Greg Capullo's work, the inking is fantastic by Danny Miki, the story is fantastic by Scott Snyder, the thing that stands out most to me in this whole run is FCO Placencia's coloring. It's just such a bizarre concept that works so fantastically well. I'm so sorry that I'm butchering the pronunciation of your name. Okay, wait, actually I'm gonna go over one more artist because I feel like I can't do this video without talking about some art by Jim Lee, who is the first comic book artist whose name I actually knew, besides maybe Mark Bagley. But Jim Lee has some of the most iconic comic art out there. Like, I think even non-comic book fans have all seen that poster of Batman standing on a gargoyle looking straight out over Gotham. He's an absolutely fantastic artist and I love all his work, but something someone recently pointed out to me is that he will do anything he can to avoid drawing feet, and I've never noticed that myself. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into Google Images, search Jim Lee comic cover, and I'm gonna look at the first 5 covers and see what the ratio of people to feet is. Okay, let's see this. First one's a Fantastic Four cover I'm not familiar with. That's definitely some of his older work, probably from the early 90s. Oh yeah, look at that. We got 5 characters in there, and no feet. None at all. Oh, look at, we got feet in this one. Black Widow's feet are out of it. Wolverine, one of his feet is there. One of them is hiding behind a stair or a step of some kind. Captain America, you kind of see 1.5 of his feet. Let's say we can see both of Captain America's feet. So we've got 2 covers, 8 people, 3 feet so far. Oh, there we go. Look at that, Harley Quinn and Batman. Both of them got all their feet out. 4 extra feet. Still not a great ratio. Oh boy. Okay, now this is a very iconic cover. It's from when Justice League was being relaunched in the New 52, the very first issue. But look at this! Look at this! We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7 are united, and none of them have their feet showing. He legit drew 7 people, nobody's feet are showing. In this case, I think that's kind of fair. This doesn't feel like anything was being forced so that people's feet were hidden. And we got... I don't know if I'll count the Doomsdays as people, so let's just say, I mean, I guess they kind of, well, let's say we got 3 more characters, none of them have feet either. And I think, was that 4 or 5? I think that was 4. And then we got picture of Superman, his feet are showing. So, here we go, he's not always hiding feet. He's one of the best artists in the industry. He obviously knows how to draw feet. They are surprisingly more complicated to draw than a lot of other things, which is weird. Like, hands I get, because drawing hands, a lot of artists find hands hard to draw, including me and every artist I've ever met, because it's like drawing a whole nother person in terms of limbs. Like, your average person has 4 limbs, but then drawing hands, it's like having to draw another 10 tiny limbs. Because a lot of the time, your fingers aren't all pointed in the same direction like this. Like, if I'm doing a simple drawing, I'll often draw the hands kinda like this so I can simplify it a bit. But a lot of the time, your hands are doing things like this, and look at all the complicated angles and perspectives you gotta draw the fingers in. Can be a real mess. Anyway, regardless of what I've said about the artists that I've talked about today, whether I was talking about good artwork of theirs, bad artwork of theirs, or both, I have a huge amount of respect for all of these artists. They're all absolutely incredible. Becoming that great at illustrating takes years and years of intense practice. I hope I'm on any of their level someday. And hopefully someday I'll watch a YouTube video where some punk kid that doesn't know what he's talking about is laying into my artwork. That's how I'll know I've made it. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching this a little bit weird episode of Popcross Studios. I'm Christian Pearson. These are the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. If you enjoyed this, let me know. I might do another one. Leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell. Most of the stuff I do on here is art and animation based off of pop culture. And yeah, hope this was fun. Put out videos every Monday and Saturday, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.